They will hold you in hotels before they can get you into centers and keep you high in them. So say I get out of a place and I'm clean. I haven't used in 2 weeks. Well, that's not going to work to get me back in detox, to get the refund checks and the kickbacks. So they're going to hold me in a hotel. Hopefully I don't get flopped into prostitution. Did you remember hearing about like this, is it Scotty Chapman or Kenneth Chapman? Kenneth Chapman. One of the biggest cases in South Florida, because he was taking women and putting them in prostitution once they could no longer be in the shuffle. The shuffle goes until the age of 26 if you're still on your parents, or if you got the money, whatever. Say you don't. All these people become homeless. So now we all have a homelessness crisis in Florida as well.
Welcome back, everybody, to Crime and Entertainment. I got two special guests joining me today. I got Bri and Ariel. Thank you for coming to Crime and Entertainment.
Thank
you for having us.
And you guys drove all the way in from Buffalo?
Absolutely. Very far.
That's some bravery right there with the weather up here, because we're actually filming this in New York, so that's a long way to drive in that kind of weather.
Yeah, it was not fun, right? Was it fun? I think she thought it was fun.
Y'all drove all night?
Oh, we drove all night. We left at 9 o'clock and got here at 8 in the morning.
Oh, and I woke up this morning. I seen her text message. It was like 8:30 in the morning. It's like, we just got in. Can we do it as late as possible?
Yeah, can we go to bed?
Jeez.
Yeah.
So you've got a very interesting story, and Ariel has been your friend, I think I said, since the third grade?
First day, third grade.
So I was actually going to do you on a separate podcast, but I figured it might be better to bring you on together. You experience and I had never really heard of this term, but medical trafficking?
Yes, medical trafficking.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right, because when we think of the word trafficking, we assume, somebody being coerced or taken into some sort of SA or something along those lines. But anytime you're putting a human being in a situation that they are being, given a kickback for some sort of cash or profit, that is, trafficking, and especially when they're being held against their will or put in situations that they're not supposed to be in. So when you look into the medical field, you get the nursing homes down to the rehab. So I experienced this when I was in 2016, when I was 19, and I called the hotline, ended up in a center in South Florida.
Wow. So we're gonna definitely dive into that, but just kind of give some context. We're gonna go back to the start. Kind of tell us the area where you grew up, and then when you met Ariel, and then kind of we'll work our way from there.
Okay, great. So I met Ariel in our hometown, which is a little bit south of Buffalo.
Okay.
Very small town.
Oh.
Very small. We met in third grade. We both had pretty sheltered lives consecutively for both of us. Middle, lower class for us. They probably actually were more towards the middle class, if you ask me. But, maybe she doesn't think that way.
I would say probably same, lower middle.
Yeah, probably same lower middle, whatever. We can call it what you want to call it. But either way, we both didn't have a whole lot of everything, you know what I mean? And we had each other. So at that point, I was struggling with friendships, and she came in real shy, holding a rainbow monkey doll in her hand, and she was wearing a fully color blocked red Hanes outfit that she wore these
sweater, sweatpants, because I had come from a different town altogether, just a whole new life, new friends, new neighbors, new house, new cat.
Right.
So it was just and
I was determined to make her my best friend the second I found out she was coming to that classroom. I didn't know her. I knew that new kid was going to be my best friend.
Well, you succeeded. I think that the funny part about that, what you mentioned, growing up and you classify, you can look now and say you were, middle class, lower class, upper class or whatever. But when you're young, you don't really know. I would classify my upbringing as maybe lower middle class, but I didn't know that. Now that I'm older, I knew other people that obviously were living the high life, and but I didn't realize that as a young kid. So I think it's just some things that we're kind of naive to growing up, which is a benefit because when you start growing up and realizing that, then all those things can kind of affect you. So you guys hit it off and, you know, stayed friends ever since. When did you first start kind of, I would say, going down, that's what we would classify as the bad path, the wrong path?
So the path that I took when I hit my teenage years, I actually was in my friend groups the generally didn't do anything wrong friend in the beginning. Like when I was in through younger ages, right through middle school, I still said awful things and maybe kind of like acted some type of way, but I didn't necessarily do anything bad. I had good grades, didn't really get in trouble. And then my friends started using substances. They started smoking pot, they started drinking, you know, and I experimented a little bit here and there, like maybe 13, 14. I think I had like a beer at a baseball field, nothing significant. And then she did nothing, right? So she literally did nothing. She stayed young and naive for a very long time, till she was about 15 or 16, if not longer, until, you know, she met her first boyfriend. So for me, I started to date. I had a kind of complicated situation with my dad where, you know, we didn't have a good relationship, which you can probably tell that by just talking to me. But with that being said, I had this weird idea, you know, way that I looked at men, and I had to pick people that needed to be saved or were struggling with substance abuse or some sort of issue. Like, it's almost like I could pick them out of a crowd. And when I started dating, that immediately led me into thinking maybe it was okay to try drugs. And my partner at the time had been addicted to opiates, so I had high anxiety. I was tired of being in school. I felt like nothing could move fast enough, even though it was moving too fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I always felt very different. I always felt like I wanted to fit in, but I didn't want to fit in. Like, I would try to act out on purpose, but then wanted to fit in. It made no sense. And I just felt like I was built for more, and I had a lot of ambition for myself, but it was going nowhere. And I felt this in myself at like 6 years old. Like, I've known my whole life that I had a mission on this earth. I've known it since I was little. My family is like, you've been saying this since you were a child. We know, you know, they're sick of hearing it at this point, and I'm sick of hearing myself say it. So when I meet him, I like start, you know, using, and then the next couple years in high school, I'm like skipping school even more. I'm somehow skipping a grade while doing this because I did get high grades, and I wanted to get out. I wanted to be done. It wasn't because I wanted to go to college, and, you know.
That made people so mad, too. Like, she would be, like, missing, like, the whole week, come in one day.
Still get good
and
grades.
then she skipped a grade, and in front of everyone, it was just like.
So did you notice a decline in any way she was acting, or did you notice any difference with you guys being as close as you were?
No. Yeah, so 6th grade was when she really started hanging out with, like, the older kids, and, like, my family life is, like, I don't know, like, how did we say it? Like,
The older kid was
we're
like
ultra
my
blended.
boyfriend.
We're, like, we're blended, we're mixed, we're whatever, so it's, like, I have adopted sisters.
Super blended
I have a
family.
half brother. I have step siblings. So it's just like there's a lot of us in one small house. We're not rich, obviously, and I ever since definitively that I can tell from 2nd grade, I had an anxiety and panic problem. So, but no one knew about it at all. Like, not even her.
I didn't know till you were like 7th grade, 8th grade.
Dude, I think
I knew you were shy and had anxiety in general, but I
it
didn't
just
know it was
seemed
that
like
bad.
I was just a shy kid. But really, I'm just like, I'm dying. So it's like, so it'd be like, so about like 6th grade, she started hanging out with them, and I'm just like, so I decided to go live with my dad, and I went and moved, so I was gone for the whole of middle school. And that was like that was probably like the biggest shift, like,
in our entire friendship.
Yeah, because like we went
and I was
from-
mad. I was
yeah,
happy
because
you
then
went
I
to-
would call you after school, but like the schools would get out at different times, so I would be home before her, waiting for her to get out of school, you know.
And I was ignoring her too, and I don't mean to interrupt
Well,
you, but
yeah.
I went through a phase where I was leaning towards wanting to be with other groups of people. And
The cool kids,
She's
the
quirky.
bad kids.
She's quirky. She's herself. She's Ariel, right? And you either love it
playing with
or
Barbies.
you don't think it fits in. And she's cool with that. But if you're not, it's like,
You're getting
then,
sucked into a whole different dynamic and different group. And a lot of
Yes.
times when that's introduced, or when people start, experimenting with substances or whatever the case, that usually follows with a new group of friends or
Yes.
a new circle that you hang around or something like that, and then you kind of exile the ones that have been there
the whole
before.
time,
Yeah.
because the drugs came after. Like, I didn't start using until I was like 16, minus like the one drink or something like that. I might have smoked pot once maybe, but at 16 is when I started actually using drugs. But I was already hanging out with those people prior to that. Like, I had a boyfriend who was older. I was already sleeping with him. It was more like a romantic thing when I
Right.
look back. Like, I was kind of looking for some sort of like partner validation, and when I would get into a relationship, I would usually kind of just like cut her out, not on purpose. And then when I hung out with other people, like my other best friend at the time, who wasn't quite good for me by any means, I actually skipped a grade to be with her more in class, and then I left her in the grade before me, and it was mainly because my other friend was doing drugs.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with her, but
you also were very protective over
I didn't
me
want her anywhere near me on
severely.
drugs
Like,
either.
we even had like a pact in elementary that we would never, so funny, never smoke, never do drugs,
I know.
never drink alcohol. It was hardcore, okay?
Yeah.
And then oh my gosh, then when she started, obviously straying, she would keep me away from all these bad kids, and I'd be like, "Okay, Nana. Okay." And I'd just be like, "All right."
I know.
But like it didn't hurt our friendship at all, because it's like we're like siblings, so it's like
I mean, I
just-
definitely think it hurt our friendship at one point. Yes, it did. That's why I called you like 5 years ago and apologized for like 20 years
and
before
I was
that.
like, "What are you doing? Like, are you fine?"
Yeah,
Like,
you were fine, because
I
I
was-
never do that.
I was like, "What's wrong?"
Yeah, when people start apologizing, you just think they got some bad news or something,
Yeah, because
My love is unconditional, so
It
I'm
is.
like, you don't have to apologize.
Right.
So I was just like, why are you sorry?
But I believe we're like soulmates. Like on Earth, I believe she's one of my soulmates. I believe we have multiple, and I knew from the beginning she's one of them. And other people have known this. This is not something that's really been questionable. I've been the one who's probably been the most disloyal if we look at our friendship, because
Maybe.
the only thing she ever did to me that made me mad is she told her mom when I lost my virginity.
I did.
Oh.
And I'm
Like-
still mad about it. No, I'm just kidding.
So it's not quite like that, but
I mean, I was like 13, so I was a little mad. And I
13.
Yeah, I was a little young. I know my kids
Okay, I
are
can
creeping
see
up
why the
on
mom
that.
was a little mad.
Yeah, well,
I
the
got cornered,
librarian-
man.
The librarian.
Yes.
I wrote a letter to my boyfriend at the time at the library saying how happy I was that we waited 8 months,
Oh,
and
my
it was
word.
beautiful, and it didn't print.
And you ratted her out to the mom.
Well, she laughed and told her
she's
mom.
She wrote this on the computer, went to print it, and it didn't come out.
So it came to the
So
librarian.
then later on, like, the library printed it out, and the librarian found it and called her mom.
So I told her,
And
and
her-
then she told her mom, and her mom was like, "Well, I don't want you around her now because, which it was very
Mommy-
good reasoning."
Mommy asked me, I think, though, and
I didn't feel that.
I
way, so
didn't lie. So she asked me, and I was like, "Yeah, this happened." She's like, "What?"
So you do eventually wind up going through. There's a lot of different scenarios we're going to get into, but you did get arrested, and you did have to do some time. Talk about the buildup and the process of things that happened that led to your arrest.
I never expected to be arrested. That was actually very far out. I mean, I knew I could be rebellious, and I knew I have a side. I have a very, go against the grain side of my personality. I might try to fit in some circumstances, but that other side's really, out there. So I end up finishing high school. I graduated a year early. I go to college just to make everybody happy because everyone's like, well, why did you bother? And I'm now using opiates pretty heavily. My partner at the time is, selling drugs out the window of this house we're staying in. That's my mom's boyfriend's house, and she has no clue because she's never done a drug in her life, doesn't even really know what's going on. My little sister lives there, who's now hooked on drugs too, and she's dating the son of my mom's boyfriend. Long story short, the kids were dating first, and then my mom met the dad, and they liked each other, and then I had to break this all to her that this was going on in the house. She wasn't happy. She left him. But Either way, so this is all going on, and my sister will not come home. You know, we're going through this whole like half a year phase. Me and her aren't seeing each other as much, you know, and that's the thing too. Part of it was to protect her. Part of it was because I felt like she had no business being in a drug situation with people that were in their 30s picking up scripts with me. Like, she was young and naive to me, and always
Yeah.
came off as like,
And I was always like the tag along. I was like, I want to come too. And she's
Yes.
like, no, girl.
yeah, you ain't coming.
No.
Like, that's not happening. Like, you don't need to. You have
Not
no
for
reason to be
you.
there. So that's part of it. There were multiple reasons that went into that. It wasn't, you know, always me being like selfless and trying to protect her, but mostly, yes, I did not want
How
her
I
anywhere
saw
near
it,
that.
though.
Now, my sister, my true sister, I didn't protect. And this is where the story's kind of messed up, because I spent more time trying to keep her out of it than my own sibling, because she'd already gotten into it. And I didn't really know in the beginning. So she starts using while I'm, you know, basically intertwined with my partner at the time. And she starts actually getting drugs off me, but having a friend pick them up. So she's not telling me that she's on them. I then find out she's using. I try to get her to detox off her med or off these pills and all these prescriptions, and now she's taking like bags of like heroin and sniffing it, and I'm trying to get her off this, and she's like 16, 17, so she's young, maybe 15, I can't remember. So we go through all this, and then me and her, actually, my sister and I were the closest we'd ever been during this time. And it's really hard to say that, because we had spent so much time growing up in our household where our parents fought often. You know, my mom was like an angel and my dad was just very much different. So we had a common understanding of our situation, but we were extremely different people. So we finally kind of came together over drugs once I accepted she wasn't going to quit. I thought I could monitor her using, you know, and I would go and kind of like skimp her bags to suit myself and to keep her from using a lot. And I did this consistently, and now I'm in heroin at this point. And I'm like snorting it, and so is she, and so is my partner. And then I skip to shooting like a month or two in, I start shooting it.
Yeah.
And this is like a year out of high school, maybe 2 years out of high school. And I wasn't going to. My partner at the time had been lying and telling me he wasn't, and I knew he was. And he basically said to me, like, one day, like, I can't get you pills anymore. They're basically eradicated. I've been giving you pills mixed with heroin for the last couple months. He's
Jeez.
like, yeah, and he's like, I've just been putting a little bit in there, and it's not a big deal. And I'd actually tried it once prior and not told him, so I was like, okay, well, what do we do about this? Because I don't want to be a quote unquote, you know, junkie. I'm telling him, like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to do heroin. And he's like, well, then he proceeds to tell me he's been shooting it. And that's where you're IVing in your vein. That's a lot, you know, it's another step
Yeah,
in your journey.
that's definitely another level. I mean, you know, sniffing is one thing, but when you go to like doing stuff intravenous, that's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people don't come back from it.
Oh yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, which I mean, I guess it could do from the sniffing too, but like you got to worry about hot doses and all kind of things with that, and then making sure that
Missing.
your needles are clean. I mean, there's a lot more danger when it comes to you doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and I don't think we know the dangers. We're so invested in getting the reward of the feeling
Right.
that we're not thinking about it. When I think of all the infections that he got, because I mean, I was pretty good at doing it, at least enough to not get infections, but I very well could have. I just got lucky.
Right.
And that's the thing with this, is I got lucky. No, I didn't overdose. I don't know why I didn't, still don't. But I watched everyone around me overdose. A lot of them died. And then so this is where we get into how I got arrested. So I got arrested after the shuffle in Florida. So I end up I'm working as a nursing aide at a nursing home that I've been at for like a year or two. And mind you, I kept a job while I was using for the first year or so. And they found out I was using. They offered me to stay there if I would go to treatment. And I'm like, oh, I'm not using, you know, the whole song and dance that we tell everybody
The
because we're
denial.
embarrassed. Yeah. And I just didn't, you know, want to tell them that. I didn't think it was their business. I didn't want to tell them. So I immediately set myself to call a hotline to go to Florida. And I called this hotline, and I had been committing like minor other little things here and there, just not really anything to get me put in jail yet. You know what I mean? I was selling stolen stuff on the internet. I was just kind of like whatever I could get my hands on that was a way to make money on the side, I
Now,
would do.
were you stealing it to sell it, or you were just
No,
getting stolen
other
property
people
and selling
would
it?
steal it, and then I would sell it
Okay.
because they'd be like, can you know, sell these to people on the marketplace or things like that. They actually, I had my first Facebook taken down by Facebook because I had sold things on there, I guess, that I wasn't supposed to be selling on there. So anyways, we're not getting into that. But yeah, so I end up going to, I call a hotline. They're like, we can send you to Florida right now. And this guy named Justin tells me how, this is going to be like the vacation of my dreams. I'm going to love Florida. I will feel like, I'm basically on vacation getting well, and it'll be the best thing I ever experienced. And of course, me from little old my area, I'm like, oh, this sounds fantastic. I'm telling my mom, and she's like, yeah, we can figure it out. Like, you can go if you want. And at this point, I have a 1-year-old daughter. And mind you, while I was pregnant, I did not use. But in between these years, I go from, living with Shane, being on drugs, completely quitting all the pills because I wasn't on heroin yet, getting pregnant with my daughter, thinking that's going to keep me from doing anything. Mm-hmm. I look at an AA book at this point and decide maybe I'm an addict. Like maybe I struggle with addiction. And I had my daughter, and 4 months after I had my daughter, I started partying again, and my mom would take her, and I'm like, oh, well, I can go out, I can smoke again, I can drink again. And realistically, if I would have left it there, it would have been fine. But I didn't leave it there. And then I started working as an aide, and that's when I became a CNA and started picking up 60, 70 hours a week, working doubles, and rewarding myself with opiates. So that's how we get to that progression. So I go to Florida within 24 hours. This is fast forward, 2 years later. I'm 18, 19, I think it was 19. I go to Florida, and I'm thinking this is like the best thing that ever could have happened to me.
Yeah, we all
thought it was.
Because, it's Florida. It's Nana, it's Bri. This is like her beach babe dream, and like we were like, she's going to get clean. It's going to be perfect.
You would never think sending somebody to rehab would result in a negative impact.
No.
Yeah.
Because it's a medical system.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
it's going to the doctor's office. They're supposed to make you better. Clearly, that's
right.
not how.
No,
that's not how.
We don't think they're going to traffic us at the doctor's office,
or give you prescriptions that you have no business needing. And
yeah, well, that happens a lot. So many people get the doctors. They get kickbacks from the insurance companies, so they give people these medications that they get hooked on, and they can't deal without them, and it just it's a massive dirty cycle of money, and they don't really care what it's doing to the person. So I've known people that they didn't even need some of the stuff that they had them on. I known a guy that worked for the Coast Guard and had his stuff together, had a legit accident where he twisted his knee or something like that. They put him on some sort of painkillers. I don't know exactly what it was, and he could not come off of them, and he was addicted, and he lost everything he had because of it. He had never done drugs before then. He might have smoked a little pot or something.
Yeah, but nothing
nothing ever to that extent. Half of America does that, probably more than half.
Yeah, I know.
But when those drugs got a hold, those painkillers got a hold to him, he could not get off. And he lost his house, he lost his wife, he don't have custody of his kids. He went through hell. And he's like on his third stint at rehab to try to, he wants to kick it, but it's just hard. But that's how quick that it can grab you and not let go.
Every day. Now,
didn't you meet somebody when you were going down there in an airport or something like that, and they tried to give you a little heads up on what was going on? What was that?
Yeah, so I'm in the layover in North Carolina, and I meet
Charlotte.
I think it was Charlotte. It was that or Atlanta, I believe it was Charlotte. And I meet this guy named Sean, and he is this good-looking, handsome young man who's telling me, he goes, "Hey, I've been watching you in the smoking room, whatever airport has a smoking room in it." And he's like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And I was like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Are you a cop? Like, what do you need?" You know what I mean? Like, random man comes up to me, and I'm already feeling very insecure. I'm real thin. I'm alone. I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to smoke my cigarettes in peace. And he's like, "Can I borrow a couple from you?" And he says, 2 years ago, I would have taken a whole pack from you, but I'm a changed person. And, leads me to this story about how God brought him to me. And he felt the need to give me his 2-year medallion, and that I could possibly be trafficked into Florida, and he wanted to know where I was going. To this day, part of me thinks like maybe he was an escort meant to get me there, and then part of me today still thinks maybe like this was still coincidental and this was really some, divine intervention.
That's freaky, man.
So he says, "Okay, well, I'm on the same flight as you." We look at our tickets, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to Palm Beach too. Do you want to sit next to each other? We'd have to switch with whoever's on the flight. They might not let us." Very odd, right? Circumstantially.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, I said, okay, whatever. And he's telling me how he had 2 years sober. He had been in Florida. Some of the rehabs were good. Some were sketchy. And I was like, well, can you be my sponsor? Like, can you help me, handsome Sean, man? And he's like, no, sweetie. Like, you can't do that. That's not how the program works. I'm like, oh, okay. So, yeah, he kind of explains the trafficking situation down there, how it can be like minor and you know nothing about it, and you go to treatment, you get a nice little bill that shows up at your front door that you can't afford to pay, or you go down there and you end up put in a trap house where you're held against your will, you're given drugs, you're told to pee in a cup because they're getting $1,500 per urine test. There's so many, it's a spectrum. So some of these places are gorgeous and nothing's happening in front of you. You know, you might feel it because all the people in that facility are not really addicted to substances anymore. They're coming in there to like poach clients for other facilities. And you might be the only one who's actually withdrawing off all these medication, you know.
So wait a minute. They're coming in there to poach clients for other facilities together?
Yes. So what they do is they come in and say, like, it's hard to explain. So say I go to a halfway house and I'm at this halfway house and I've already come into my recovery and my
So you've already went through the rehab, you're clean, and they would put you in like a halfway house.
But you don't have to be clean. This is the thing. So we could say in a better situation, say I'm clean, but the owner says, hey, Bri, like I can give you, you know, $1,200 per person you get into this halfway house, especially if it's covered by the insurance company. If anyone had private insurance and were under the age of 26, because that's how long you can be on your parents usually, for private or PPO, they could run that in multiple ways in Florida and get away with it and charge your insurance in New York, where they're never going to check to see what's actually going on. So when I called that hotline and I sent my insurance card over, they would take that insurance card and run it through multiple people, not just like one, you know, and all these people that work with them will then run how much of a kickback they will get from the insurance company to send you to their list of facilities. So by the end of this, it's about who's going to pay out the highest. It has nothing to do with the quality or the care or what you're on. So then you find yourself possibly in the middle of South Florida in a trap house that basically you were supposed to be, your detox could have been nice and you've just been shuffled there, and there's other people poaching other people to come to their halfway. So it's a cycle that never ends. It's hard to explain because when you hear it, you're like, medical trafficking, what is that? You know, and when you break it down, it's basically just a continuous cycle of people from the upper states like New York and, you know, New Jersey is another one that it was called the toilet bowl because they would go down to Florida, flush to Florida, and end up back in New York or back in Florida or passed away or died.
Right.
So this was like a back and forth. And say you're running from a charge. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to Florida. They ain't going to extradite you. So all these people now, they can't, say the cops call you and you're in rehab. They can't confirm or deny whether you're in that facility. Right. So a lot of these people were criminals running from charges who were being fed drugs in the facilities. And half these people were trying to really get well, but by the time they got through with it, they didn't care anymore. Because once you go to a facility, say you stay the full time, they're not letting you go home. You're not going home. You have to fight tooth and nail to go home. They will send you then to a halfway house or a long-term program. So say you go to detox, you go to a 28-day inpatient. Mind you, they're getting paid by your insurance company the whole time. The most they get paid, the highest level of care, which is detox. Then you go to inpatient. That's the second highest level of care. That's PPO, you know, inpatient rehab. That, I believe they get like $5,000, $7,000 around that range for, right? So then you go, and they're offering you money in this process if you're not wanting to stay. So say you're like, no, I don't want to stay with you. I don't want nothing to do with you anymore. Like, I want to go somewhere else. So you say, no, I'm going to offer you $1,200 or $800 to do the 21 days. But then I get out and you go, I can't pay you until you go to the halfway house. So now I'm in the halfway house, right? I'm still in the cycle. And I'm getting mad. I'm like, what are you going to do to keep me here? So you're buying me cigarettes. You're buying me food. You're buying me clothes. You know, I'm hustling you too. We're hustling each other. That's what starts to go on. When people understand how it works, the people who are victimized then start victimizing the brokers, which in reality, they're all victims because they're being put in harm's way on purpose. But realistically, then you start thinking, well, okay, if you're going to give me this, this, and that, then like it's going to keep feeding my addiction. And that's what I'm essentially didn't want in the first place, but that's how it happens. And then people die in hotels, so they will hold you in hotels before they can get you into centers and keep you high in them. So say I get out of a place and I'm clean. I haven't used in 2 weeks. Well, that's not going to work to get me back in detox, to get the refund checks and the kickbacks. So they're going to hold me in a hotel. Hopefully I don't get flopped into prostitution. Did you remember hearing about like this, is it Scotty Chapman or Kenneth Chapman? Kenneth Chapman. One of the biggest cases in South Florida, because he was taking women and putting them in prostitution once they could no longer be in the shuffle. The shuffle goes until the age of 26 if you're still on your parents, or if you got the money, whatever. Say you don't. All these people become homeless. So now we all have a homelessness crisis in Florida as well.
Jeez.
And then they go into prostitution because how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay when you're running from a charge and you're a woman, right? And you have maybe kids you think you have to support back home or whatever you're doing, and you have nowhere to live. So say you can't go anywhere, you're going to go into prostitution. And sometimes it's not even it's not because you want to, it's because you're coerced or you're told to. Now, I didn't end up in that situation, thank God, but I did have a sexual assault happen in a hotel. I was drugged and left there by a guy who was supposed to be taking me to a halfway house.
And that guy worked for the facility?
No, he didn't. So he said he did. He did not. I was in a rehab. My ex and I ended up going back to Florida, so I went twice. I stupidly thought it'd be smart to go to a different facility and see if it just wasn't like this overall.
Right.
So the first one wasn't that bad. I stay 11 days. They tried to run my insurance really long. It's pretty. Everything goes great. I go home. I get in some big trouble with the law, and I come back because now I'm doing what everybody else is doing. And I've been, basically hanging around older people that were criminals, and we're doing all this stuff with the boosting. And I knew I was coming next. And I think I had written 10,000 in bad checks at this point, which wasn't a lot in comparison, but at that point was enough for me to get really scared.
Yeah.
So me and my ex are like, hey, let's get well together. Let's get clean. You know what I mean? We're going to do it together. So we both go down there. We think it's like the best idea ever. He's all for it. We pay off all our fronts, all the stuff that we had left behind, the people that we don't care about, we don't pay. And both of us end up shuffled. So it's not just me, it was him too. And if I would try to stay at a facility, the first one, right? For example, I stayed 12 days, should have been there 30. I was dead set on getting well in that facility. There was nothing wrong with it. I felt safe. I didn't know brokering was really going on to that extent. I had heard about it, had some guy kept telling me about it in the last facility, didn't take it seriously. Met a guy in that facility. So the sexual assault happened because I'm here. My ex decides to up and leave because he just met a group of people who are telling him that he's boss, he's king, let's go to this halfway house and we're going to pay you. And he's all about the money. So he's like, you come with me or you stay here. Like, you pick. So I start, I do the whole crying thing, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay. Like, I want to get well. Like, I want to get clean. I have a child. I want to get better. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, well, suit yourself. Takes the only people I know there and leaves. So a couple days later, I think 5 days later, I end up kind of just like going, wow, this is what my 4-year relationship has been. This is what he's literally leaving me in the middle of South Florida on my own. And even though we shouldn't be together in treatment shouldn't be co-ed, it still felt like, you're abandoning me. So I end up having a whole mental breakdown, and some girl offers me drugs and I take them. I'm now embarrassed. I don't want to fail a drug test. And I get a message from a guy. Now, mind you, we have our phones, and this is a marketing scam for this. So they give you your phones there. So that at 5 o'clock, you're in front of the pool. Like, hey, come down to Palm Beach Gardens. It's so wonderful. So all people on the internet are seeing is what's going on in your stories, your Facebook posts. Mm-hmm. This all interconnects to the online recovery world. All of it. Didn't make this connection until, the last couple of years. But so we're all on our phones. We're like, advertising for facilities. They're saying, do you have any friends that want to come down that right? So you're calling your friends for them while you're 3 days clean.
And they're offering you kickbacks for this. So I'm not saying it was you, but say you had a drug problem and then she convinced you to join her at this rehab facility.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Then you're going to get a kickback of money. How much was they offering per person?
So it depended on who you got, but like say I got her, it'd be like $500. Say she goes to detox, $500. Say that I've been with the same broker for a while and he's been placing me over and over again. He might offer me a little more. It just depends. Or he might offer. So what happens though is a lot of times they don't pay you and they give you drugs through someone else.
Now, when you say give you drugs, what do you mean by that?
Like we go, so fast forward to like my 8th rehab because I did like 25. The 8th
25
one,
rehabs?
yeah, it was
Jeez.
24, 25
So many.
in 5 months, 5 or 6 months. So I'm down here with this guy named Cody or whatever, and he worked for a big broker. I don't know this. He's brokering me. He's my buddy, and he's brokering me. I have no clue. I don't know. He's making money off me. I just think he's my bestie.
So he's bouncing you from rehab to rehab to rehab
Yes.
and collecting money on it, and you have no idea.
So he would keep us, like, the first one, he kept us 18 days. And I love this guy. Like, I wish he wasn't doing this because it's awful. But 18 days in the first one, he's an addict too. Like, he's a substance user. He's struggling too. So he wants to get his fix too. So I get it. He was just in the same position we were, but had a little bit of a higher step over us. So 18 days, we're in this one facility, and he goes, I'm getting kicked out for being racist. And I'm like, when were you racist? I find out nothing ever transpired. He made that up. So we would AMA because the 18-day mark for them was when the insurance would pay out. So I was doing well. I'm 18 days in. I'm looking good. I'm gaining weight. I'm happy, right? And he started saying this place is crazy. The guy here hates me. He's going to hurt me. Trying to get us to leave with him because he knew me and my boyfriend at the time were friends with him. So they will date you. Guys and girls will come in there looking to be your boyfriend or your girlfriend. They will come up to New York. Like Mount Laurel up here in New York, there's men that come in there will find women who are in the rehab, know that they are seeking companionship, know that they are broken and they are hurt, and they want someone to love them. And they will go, listen, baby, we can go to Florida together. And they will take them out of that rehab, send them to Florida, and leave them there alone to possibly die, be given drugs, or hopefully they get through that rehab okay, and then they end up homeless or dead.
So the guy that you said you wound up being, having an assault on you, you said he didn't work for the facility?
A lot of people don't work for these facilities. They're like middlemen. So there's like,
Okay.
we're all associated. I don't know how to explain this because no one has a title. So the rehabs don't ever want to be caught doing this. So realistically, they have like, Bobby over here who doesn't work for me, but I exchange money with him.
Okay.
This guy was wanting to sleep with women. That's all I wanted. So what he would do is when a girl was in a treatment facility, he would go through the friends list of my one friend that I met in the first facility. I met this guy over and over again, the one that I was friends with. I would see him at you see everyone again. The next rehab, you see all your buddies again. Your buddies. So I see him and he adds me on Facebook, and this guy, his name was like CJ, I think. I don't have no problem calling him out. CJ finds me on my friend's account, goes through the list, sees my name, sees I'm from New York, sees I'm in rehab. He knows what girls are in rehab and would go through different friends' accounts. He texts me like, hey, are you anywhere local? Are you in a rehab? Because I saw you're from New York and you were just added on my friend's account, like my mutual friend. I'm like, yeah, my boyfriend left me here 5 days ago, and, I'm scared, and I have a girl in my room with me, my roommate, and her name's Bri, and she's from Buffalo, too, and she's like, hey, let's go with him, because he offers us a ride to a halfway house. He says he works for one, and he can get us in tomorrow. So we're like, okay, this sounds safe. You see why I'm paranoid now?
Yeah.
Oh, this sounds safe.
Yeah, no.
So
it definitely made you way more paranoid.
yeah, I know. So he pulls up in a Lexus and picks us up, and we get our stuff, and we AMA, right? We have signed paperwork. They didn't have a phone for me at this point, so they couldn't hold it over my head. Usually they hold your stuff for 72 hours, so you have no phone or money, and you get stranded on streets if you leave. So, but we snuck through a gate. We didn't even do paperwork. We snuck through a gap in the gate. So we got picked up. This is where they were getting drugs through there, was through the gate too. And this place was beautiful.
And this is all a facility designed to help people.
Yeah, none of it's designed to help you. Even the meetings, drug dealers are in the meetings, and you know who is running the AA meetings? People with like a month sober are running 300, group meetings. Ooh. And I'm not against that. Like, I think a month is way too early to be doing that. But
yes,
it's on purpose. They're all newcomers because it's like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the whole time, like, she checks in with us, like, we're all thinking everything's fine. She's in Florida. She's living her greatest time.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you know what all this was going on?
No, I do know that it was very difficult to know where the hell she was, and I know because I never had any concept. Mind you, small town brain here, but I'm just like, I thought you were at this place. Where did... She's like, no, that was like 5 places ago. I was like, what? And so it's just like... And there's so much going on. It's so fast tracked, so fast paced for her. And we're just up here like, oh, she's just tanning. Oh, she's just getting her a massage. And so is Shane. And like, so we're just, we're just assuming like, oh, we're not hearing from them a lot because they're getting well. Like they're having a good time.
And you didn't realize at the time what was really going on, did you? Or had you started to kind of comprehend?
I caught on somewhat quickly. First couple rehabs, no. I kept thinking it wasn't as widespread as it was.
Yeah.
In my head, I was so in denial. And then I was like, okay, well, if they're going to use me, I'm going to use them. This was my thought process. I go from, realizing I'm being victimized to, well, okay, then what are you going to give me then? And I got blacklisted. I was one of the biggest blacklisted couples in that area because I would go, and if they didn't meet my needs, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I turned into one of those people. Towards the end, and I knew a lot of these people were out here, like, committing high crimes, bad crimes, like hurting people to where they aren't here anymore. Like, I knew some of these brokers were doing really bad things. And
that's crazy.
It's part of it. Give someone a hot shot, right? They're going to talk about this.
Yeah,
like now it's been 10 years for me, so every place I went is closed. But realistically, is it scary when you're a young person coming out of a rehab and you know something fraudulent's going on and you know that like women are sleeping with the owners of the facilities to keep their stay pay up and this I wish I could just, there's so, like I had a girl, okay, I met a girl, she's young, like 19 like me, we're super young, and she her boyfriend dies on the flight down to Florida, and I hope she never sees this, but boyfriend dies, they both get to Florida, she gets off, and within her second stay, we end up both being at some stay in Liberty City together. I don't want to say the name, but we end up both there. And she goes missing because her new boyfriend that she met in this, who's the new guy brokering her, had brokered her out to another facility. And when her insurance ran out, he sold her to basically like a gang, like it's like the Haitians down there, they run certain parts, and I'm not saying this about all of them at all, I'm saying there are certain gangs in their vicinities, right. And he sold her to them for $40. So she was literally held up for I think like 4 or 5 days, and weirdly enough the facility picked her up from where she was being held because eventually he told them, I don't know why, he decided to tell them after saying that she was kidnapped and how worried he was for her, but one day he decides to give me her clothing and goes up to them right after and says, I let her get kidnapped. This is where she is. Can you pick her up and bring her here? And the facility never turns them in. Like, this is the kind of stuff that you just were mind blown because you have, 30, 25-year-olds all shooting up with the same needle because it's illegal, and people dying every night, and using steroid needles to get high. And it was just trap houses, big mansions, beautiful ones, covered and littered in trash. The staff bringing you drugs from one patient to your house. So you would have the staff who'd be like, you give me $10, I'll go to the other patient in the other house, safe haven, and get you a bag, and then I'll come back and give it to you. I was in a big case actually recently for that, so it's already out there. I did a victim statement for Safe Haven. It was like $180 million that they had to pay back, and right now they're all in prison for a certain amount of time. But for that situation, we're all in these houses, these trash houses, and they told us at our detox facility we were being transferred to a beautiful rehab and at this point we were done. Towards the end, the last 4 facilities, I had been begging Shane to go home. I'm like, I can't do this. I have nothing. My dignity's stripped. I've been assaulted. I didn't tell him. So when all that happened with the guy, because of his reactions, I didn't really immediately tell him. And they put me on suicide watch. That night, one of my good friends overdoses. Luckily, he survives. He's actually doing a big production with me on this now. But he's doing okay. He's doing good. He's a lot better than where he was at that point. So he's in there. I get there after being gone for a week and we're separated, right? Because I'm having this happen in the hotel, and my partner is stuck in a halfway house with all the people he brought with him. So now that rehab, I tried to go back to it. They wouldn't take me back because they said my boyfriend took people out of there, so they refused to take me back. So I get into his halfway house. They put me on suicide watch. We go to a outpatient program, like a new one, and they would run you as outpatient and inpatient. So, and you would piggyback off each other's insurances. So, like, say she's got good insurance and she's not willing to come in without me.
Right.
What are you going to do? You're going to run hers twice. Keep me. Happens all the time.
Yep.
Happens all the time.
And the insurance companies don't catch this? Or they just...
It's out of network.
Oh.
They don't.
Now
they
what
care.
Was it like more like just like the big mass of it? Like just, I mean, it's so many people. They're doing it all so fast, right? And it's just robots, really, right? Like, from what I don't know, like it's numbers.
Well,
so they're not looking to see like, oh, how was the patient feeling? They're just like, oh.
And you can
got
fudge
paid.
those numbers. You're fudging numbers, whereas in network you can't.
Right. Well, one thing that jumped off the page to me was when you were talking, you said that most of the places you spent time at are now closed.
They're all closed.
All closed.
I think every single one I went to was closed.
Probably,
Even the good
So-
ones. Even
so
the ones I thought were legit.
So I was about to say, obviously they're not very good if they're all closed. I mean, that's got to be a red flag. If I'm looking at like all these people that are doing this and they're all closed now.
Yes.
I mean, because there was a big thing. I don't know if you ever, I forgot the name of the documentary, but it was two brothers.
Body brokers?
No, it wasn't Body Brokers. They were,
That's a good one.
they opened up, they called it something medical. It was basically you could just go and say you got something wrong with you, and they would write you a script for Oxycontin.
Oh, they did that down there.
Yeah.
That was right next to us.
Yeah.
That was happening while we were down there.
It was two brothers that started that whole thing, and I
Oh.
mean they were making a killing. And they started getting competition that was trying to like cut them because they opened up one in Jacksonville, and so the people like these people. It was one guy from Tennessee. He would load up a bus. He rented a bus and would pile everybody on it and either pay them in cash or pay them in some of the pills. But he was like, I'll load you up. I'll take you down there. They're going to write you a prescription for 180 Oxycontin. You can have 80. I take 100. And they were taking people down there by the busload, literally by the busload. And how it eventually wound up.
To get scripts for other people, right?
Yeah. They had a in their pocket MRI guy, like out back. So if they needed something to justify your back's hurt, let me send you out back here to the MRI. You walk out the door, you go around the corner, you go in this, yep, you got something wrong here. And then, so it was just, all of it was all to justify giving you that.
That's
and
insane.
One of the people that left one of the facilities ran, I don't know if he got hit by the train or if he ran into the train while it was going, but either way, they met a bad end with the train.
Absolutely.
And there was like 4 people in the car. Every one of them had scripts from that place. And so when the cops seen that triggered them like, look, maybe one person, but why does
not a
4
whole
people
bus?
have all these, scripts? And so that kind of slowly led them to build an investigation, and it all came crashing down. But essentially it was just legalized drug dealing because they had doctors in their pocket. They had the MRI people that were working for them. And they even had, one guy went in there wearing like a wire with a camera, and like, you seen the owner, oh, you go with that? Yeah, we'll get you, you're going in there, see the doctor, we'll get you squared away. And I mean, I'm talking millions of dollars.
I mean, I know, like, so by this point, I don't think really we had spent so much time apart, let alone the distance. Like, that really got to me. And like, my husband was just
Same
as
thing.
bad.
Worse.
Worse, really, because I mean, at least like, she kept everything away from me. He brought it all around me all the time. I mean,
Yeah, and that's rough when you're subjected to it like that, especially if you don't do it and it's just subjected all around you. I'm not saying that always happens like that, but it is generally a matter of time before you're just kind of sucked in.
It was
it's a slower
so
burn,
hard.
but it usually winds up happening like that.
Because, like, I held on with an iron fist. And we go to pick her up, and it's like, that car ride back from the airport is when I found out everything.
That have been going on.
Yeah. And I was like,
I told you like a piece of it. I didn't go like.
bruh, it was just, I know.
I
just
think
the
I just told you like
the
like that's what had
tip
happened,
of the iceberg,
like,
and I
what?
just was like, what the actual?
Like, yeah.
Because, like, it was unfathomable to me. I couldn't even. I mean, still
'Cause
even hearing
it's so
it, I'm
hard.
just like, I have no idea.
To me, I was taken aback when I started listening because you were talking about this on your Instagram, and we'll definitely plug that before we wrap up. But you were breaking down the story on Instagram, and I was just like steady looking and flipping and looking because I was like, I'd never heard of this before. But once you say it and the way it basically manipulates the insurance systems, it makes perfect sense. And it definitely is. I don't put it past anybody to. I mean, the world is so full of greedy people and cruel people that do all kinds of weird things. So it's definitely not shocking. It's like it was weird because I was shocked to find out about it, but I wasn't shocked that it actually
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
kind
get
of
that.
the give and take. Now there was a story I wanted to get to,
Oh, God.
and you know where I'm going with this.
Come on.
So that was in the middle.
What, the lawnmower story?
Yeah. The
lawnmower story is right. I think it was either after or right before or right after Florida. I want to say it actually was right after, before my arrest. So this all ends with my arrest of like 32 charges, but I steal
32.
a lawnmower. Yes, and half of them are felonies. I steal a lawnmower. Well, my ex does, and I take the charge. So basically, he gets mad one day because he thinks I'm going to go use without him. So he rides a lawnmower that he stole from the neighbor to my house. Because I'm
There's
trying,
no
I'm
way to be
trying to
sneaky
get
about
away from
this.
him. You know, I'm trying to like do my own thing with my sister, and we're all, you know, doing our thing, and I just didn't want to share with him. So he rides to my house at 3 o'clock in the morning, gets pulled over on it. They don't pick him up.
Pulled over on a lawnmower.
On the lawnmower that then
lawnmower.
I take the charge for.
What was he weaving in and out of the lanes, or were you just on
It's
the
3
highway?
in the morning.
Yeah,
You know
on a
everybody.
riding
You're like,
lawnmower.
why are you on a lawnmower on this route at 3 in the morning? And the guy reports it's stolen, so he tells me that it's like his dad's or something. He gave me some story that I knew wasn't true, but I didn't care either. I didn't care. So I was like, all right, we're gonna sell it. Whatever, we'll sell it. So he helps me sell it. I help him sell it. I think we put it online. Someone buys it, and then they say, hey, did the cops come by? And they're like, is this a stolen lawnmower? And I'm like, I mean, they're like, yeah, we know it's your boyfriend's. And they tell me, we know he took it. And I'm like, no, he did not. I'm just going, oh, my friend from this place left me this phone, and he's from Florida. The guy who called me is from Florida. And I have this little Obama phone from a guy that a guy robbed me in Florida, and I pushed him off his bike, and I took his phone. So I had this little Obama phone.
The little
and I
black
was using
brick.
this number to tell the cops that this was the number who had called me or whatever, and that's who it was. And I basically had blamed my friend who was doing all this time. I asked him, like, can I just tell them that, like, it was your buddy that came to get the lawnmower and brought it to us? And he's like, why are you covering for this dude? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, yes, that's how I got. And they ended up dropping that charge itself. I did take the charge, but they combined all my charges, so it really just went away. And then the judge was like, oh, you're James's daughters. And that was very embarrassing.
You had 38?
32.
32.
Yeah.
Well, that was what? The checks?
Check fraud. Each check, if it's a felony, it carries like 2 charges. If it's petty larceny, grand larceny, deceivement through like fraudulence. My sister was doing it with me, and we all did it. But unfortunately, like, I took the fall for all of it. When we had an agreement, no one came to that agreement. So, and my ex had already gotten in trouble, so I knew he was going to be okay coming out. I would be okay coming out, and he might not. So I was okay with it. And they told me I would get organized crime if we were all added to the case. So they put me and my sister on a case, didn't add him to mine, put him on his own with his other charges, and then just said, like, basically, we'll just add to your file because you're going to get it all consolidated anyways.
Yeah, they pad it, and like that's a lot of times when you see people go and they got like, 25 charges, 39 charges,
Yeah,
or
they
whatever.
all go
it all boils down
consecutive
to one.
or-
They're going to get rid of most or dismiss most of them, and they're going to keep the one that's going to stick you there the longest.
Yeah, I think I sat for like 4 months. I did have like paraphernalia and driving without a license, a couple of those. Like, it was just a compilement. The checks, I believe there was like 16 of them. I did write $50,000 in bad checks in 2 months. I did get in trouble for, I believe, 20 grand of them and was not forced to pay restitution. So, end of the story, I did get well from going to rehab in New York. I went to jail for 4 months, spent a year in treatment. This was in 2016 to 17. Get accepted into the nursing program while on drug court. Finished my nursing program a year later, like top 6 in my class. My teachers come to my drug court proceeding and beg them to drop my charges. And they dropped me down to a conditional discharge, which it was like 6 months of me fighting to get that, so it didn't just happen overnight. It was supposed to be that if I completed drug court, I would get like a misdemeanor, 2 misdemeanors or something. And they kept working on this case. So like originally it was 5 years in prison if I failed. Then it went down to like 2. And then they found out I went to Florida. So this is where this helped me. My situation in Florida, being trafficked through that system, when I told drug court what happened to me down there and how I was just trying to get help down there, they went through this big thing trying to get me out of these charges because they believed that I had been victimized and trafficked. So the actual like attorney and the investigator for our county totally went above and beyond to make sure this 21-year-old girl who's been abused, been sexually assaulted, you know, been trafficked by a medical system, had a chance at life. So he gave me that.
Yeah.
With no restitution.
I mean, you know, you got to catch a break every once in a while.
That's a big break, but yeah, I agree.
What's your message to people out there that are about to go into a rehab facility? And I guess it'll be 2 questions. What is the message? And the second one is what you went through still going on right now. With not necessarily, I'm not talking about with you. I mean in the aspect of that this whole medical trafficking thing, is it still an issue?
Yes.
And if it is, then what do these people that are going into rehab need to look out for? I think that's a good way to wrap it up.
This is a perfect way to wrap it up. If you are looking into going into treatment and you want to know, you know, what are my options? First of all, you need to look at all your options. Don't just automatically assume rehab's where you gotta go. There's meetings, there's, you know, clinics, there's options. You just look at all of them. If you have a loved one who wants to go and you know they're really bad off, right? Research the facility. Once you get into private insurance, your chances of this happening go up, no matter how we look at it. And I do work with I work with a group that's a nonprofit that helps people get pulled out of the shuffle. It's called Midnight Path.
Okay.
And right now it's pretty small. It's kind of growing. I'm on the board. So we basically, you know, do whatever we can to get people who are stuck. And the girl that runs it, she will get people literally taken out of like a facility if they're bad off and they want to go home and they need help getting out, like funding to get on a flight because they're not going to pay for you to go home.
Right.
So it's still going on. They did clean up South Florida at one point, like where they came in, they brought the task force, they started breaking down a lot. That's why they're all closed. All these facilities closed. But people get smarter.
Yeah.
So is it safer now than it was back then? I'd say possibly, yes, it might be slightly safer. It might not be as rampant. But now it's in California. Now it's in all the other states because as they're closing down those facilities down there, it's rising up here. And now we're seeing an increased rate in Medicaid fraud because those policies are being put into place. So do your research very heavily. Look at all your options. You know, if you work for a facility and you have questions about your facility, if you feel that's happening, I would leave. Yeah. You know, obviously it's up to you whether you want to do something about it, but don't ever work for a facility that you think is doing this because you're a part of the problem and you're referring clients. So you could be at a hospital referring clients to a center that is, you know, people are dying when they're leaving. So it's better to spread this story and spread this message so that somebody near you knows this, so that they know that just because one path is open, it doesn't mean it's the only way to get better. Because we can all get better.
100%. I agree with that. And that's the thing, kind of like what you mentioned, when they all kind of did get shut down, a lot of times that don't necessarily stop it, but it forces them to go back to the drawing board and figure out ways to do it and not get caught.
Yes.
And, you know, so it's the constant game of cat and mouse, and that's with anything, whether it be organized crime or, you know, medical fraud or whatever. That's the story from the beginning of the time. That'll always be there.
Absolutely.
So I like that. Just make sure you're doing your research. Make sure you know where you're going.
Reviews. Yeah, look at the reviews. That's another thing, you know.
What is your Instagram so people can go follow you and check you out on there?
So my Instagram, I believe it's Bri Jaynes Speaker on my Instagram, or it's Bri Jaynes, and then my TikTok account is Bri Jaynes Speaker, and I have a YouTube, which is Breaking Chains: The Whitney Project, and my Facebook is Bri Jaynes. So there's a whole bunch.
All right. Ariel,
to
you on
follow.
social medias?
I mean, nah, I just mom it up.
There you go.
I mean, I play Dungeons and Dragons, guys. I like video games, and
And this is
Yeah.
a vulnerable experience. This is her first time coming on, so you just
Maybe you guys, in sharing your stories together, can help other people that were in similar situations, and that's really what we try to do on these shows is, create awareness, create, interest
Yeah.
in people wanting to do a little bit more deep diving on things. And then there's no teacher than somebody that's been through it. There's no better teacher
Yeah.
to teach everybody. So thank you guys for coming down. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your story, Bri, Ariel. I really
I
appreciate
got
it.
one quick thing.
Absolutely.
Quick thing to add. Okay, when I mentioned the recovery community being, invested in all this with the patient brokering and the medical trafficking, a lot of the people you see online who are recovery influencers, make sure you vet them out too, because if they have a hotline at the top, or they're, constantly saying, call this hotline for help, this
They're
is my
getting
story,
kickbacks.
they're getting kickbacks. So if you have
That's a
someone
big
you
red
love in a
flag, yeah,
door
for sure.
and you're looking up to them, I don't want to burst your bubble, but when you see those hotlines and those websites, always check who they're through, who owns the companies, and
Yeah,
once you
be
see the
careful.
number, it's probably, there's a high chance that's what's going on. That's it. I'm done.
All right. Well, thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of Crime and Entertainment. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Okay.